hell is this on the cover? Who is this? I mean, how could they do that? It's insane. I don't know who that person is. Weird. I'm sorry, though.
It's called James Patterson.
By James Patterson. Oh, that's the whole title. The actual title is James Patterson by James Patterson.
And I'm sitting there and looking, and I'm like, was there any other title that got thrown out along the way? Or
No. It's James Patterson by James Patterson. That's the title, the whole thing. No, it's a little, whatever. No, they love that title.
I think it's totally perfect. So back in 1999, we're just going to go back in time, you proposed to your publisher that you're going to write 3 books a year. And I know Larry Kirschbaum, who was running the house at that point, and I could just picture the conversation of not 1 book a year, 3. So since then, there have been many more per year. How far in advance do you work? Are you on 2023 planning, 24? Where are you?
Yeah, one of those, 25.
25.
It really depends. I don't plan. There's a lot of things going on. Most of them aren't even under contract. So if you're representing a book company here, we could maybe do a little something, Yeah, we're way out in front.
Well,
I mean, next year's are all done, obviously, and a lot into the following year. We got 2 with Mike Lupica coming up this year, and you always hope that they're going to all turn out great, and they don't. But the 2 with Lupica, House of Wolves is the first one, and then we'll see if this lasts. The current title is Jane Effing Smith. I don't know. I love it. We'll see. Sorry, God.
we are on the altar.
Yeah. That's good. I think she, whatever. Yeah, sorry.
So, what books are you working on simultaneously?
Yeah.
Do you have a day I'm doing this, or I'm meeting with, it just all happens?
It's just a mishmash. It's a stew. It's my life.
It's your life, okay. So do you think that, you're CEO of J. Walter Thompson, right?
I was.
And you were managing a lot of products there.
Here's the thing about advertising.
Go ahead.
I've been clean for over 25 years.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, but I'm a Toys R Us kid. This is where it came from. So, the character dancing around, this is the guy.
The line. I had help on it, though. I collaborated on that, too.
You got covered it? Oh,
Yeah, Linda Kaplan. Great, wonderful lyricist and whatever, yeah.
You're really great. So, I take it that you can manage a lot of creative projects well. And my other thing is, I think you loathe wasting time and don't suffer fools.
Well,
right
here I am. No, I'm kidding.
But it's, to manage that many projects, to keep everybody inspired who's working on the project with you, is a lot of work. I mean, it's just, besides the ideas you're coming up with, it's seeing how the train is leaving the station and isn't on time.
It really isn't. I've said this before, I do not work for a living. I play for a living. And the co-writing, when I do that, it's a joy. It's not, I will write a 60 to 80 page outline and then encourage the co-writer to contribute for 2 reasons. One, I want the contributions, and secondly, I want them emotionally involved. And then, I will look at, unlike publishers who, let us know when you have a whole book, I'll look at work pretty much every 2 weeks. And it's a lot easier to deal with, 20 or 30 pages than it is. I was just with Rita Braver for breakfast this morning, and she just did John Irving. His new book, I think, is 900 pages.
It is.
I go, So the co-writing thing, it's a lot of fun. I love doing it, and hardly anybody ever leaves.
Yeah, 2 of my friends among your writers are Jim Bourne and Mark Sullivan. And Jim is really funny. He's ex.
Not really.
Well, I thought it'd be funny. Well,
He thinks he's funny. Yeah.
well,
Lupica is really funny.
Lupica is really funny.
Lupica is tremendously funny. We spend our lives talking about, we sneak donuts into our houses on it. My wife is right here. I'm just kidding about the donuts on it. And we send pictures, if we're successful, of the donut in our office and things like that. Yeah.
Things like that. Jim, I was down for Thriller Fest one year down in Florida, and I said, I'd love to learn to shoot a gun. And he said, we'll go to the shooting range. So I show up, and I'm wearing a skirt, heels, and he's like, what is this outfit for going to the... And I said, Charlie's Angels, remember? I said, let's just go get it. And I did extremely well, which made him extremely nervous.
Well, I could see you shooting yourself out of your shoes. Whoa, the heels, they're not a good idea. At any rate, yeah, Charlie's Angels, yeah, that's very realistic.
So, very realistic, right?
Like my books, Women's Murder Club, sure.
They'll get from one place to the other very quickly. You know, they typically get an outline, the word quota, a deadline. And I like this line from Marshall Clark, which that writers don't pitch ideas, you give out assignments. And then, as you said, you have conversations with them along the way. Like, you know at the beginning where the nuts are of the book, like where you're going to start, correct?
The whole thing, it's scene by scene. There it is. And we may change things, and usually the ending will change. Mm-hmm. There's certain things you don't know when you start. Like sometimes, this isn't the right language, but I'll fall in love with the villain. And, you know, sometimes I want to keep the villain going. So at the end, somehow the villain, you know, miraculously escapes or something like that. But you don't know. And if you think you know it all, then it probably isn't going to be that good a book.
So
it needs to live and change and whatever. You know, when I tell you the way my style started, I set out with Along Came a Spider. I really wanted to, okay, I'm ready. I know what my strengths are. I know what my weaknesses are. And I wrote an outline that was like 380 pages. The outline.
wow.
I was going to be like...
Or John Irving.
Yeah, John Irving. But I read it and I said, you know, this is the book. Mm-hmm. I added to it, and that's where the short chapters came from, and that's where the colloquial storytelling. I write the way we tell one another stories for the most part, and it would be a disaster if everybody wrote that way, but that's how I write. I'm telling you a story, I'm going to tell it in human language, I'm not going to, I know some big words, mostly they're not appropriate, and you know, because as human beings we tend not to use those, except if somebody who writes that kind of book, and all of a sudden all these big words that we never hear, and there they are. But generally, so I'm not against them, but I don't use them very much.
Well, even in your autobiography, it's short chapters. It's these little, like, it could be a page, it could be 3 pages, 4 pages, and you see exactly what happened there. After you write, do you edit yourself and say, word not needed, and go back, or do you just write clean?
Well, it's not word, it's page not needed. Paragraph, yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, what you leave in is more important than, or what you take out is more important than what you leave in. And it was one of those.
But you know, it's really interesting because everything has ramped up so quickly with everybody watching streaming. But action happens fast. Action happens quickly. And
you know, not really so much. If you really look at a lot of the Netflix stuff, it's slower than hell. A lot of and you put up with it. It's okay. But they're really, I mean, it's much slower than movies.
Right.
It's like, you know, what would have been 10 minutes in a movie is now an hour show. Tune in tomorrow or whatever, you can keep streaming. So it is, speaking of the movie things we do, it's an interesting time. I'm hopeful. This is not a good idea to be hopeful about Hollywood, but we're going to start shooting Alex Cross series for Amazon in January. And I think we're going to start shooting Run Rose Run with Dolly and somebody, I don't know who, in like April, I think.
Okay.
So there's a lot of stuff. And then the Christmas book, the 12 topsy-turvy, messy days of Christmas, we actually have a script on that already.
Really?
Yeah, so that's cool. It's the guy who wrote it with, he had written the Netflix version of Lemony Snicket.
Okay.
Good fun writer. So, it's a fun book, I think. What do I know?
The writers that I know that have written with you have said that your writing has helped them to look at their work a completely different way. Mark Sullivan was saying, I cut words and sharpen it as I move along. And
yet, look at the books he does by himself. Go on forever, 600 pages. No. They say they learn, they don't know.
They don't really learn. So the book you co-authored with Dolly has been a huge hit this year, to say the least.
Yeah.
I looked the other day, the numbers was 462,000 copies in print alone.
Sold, actually.
Crazy, sold. Yeah.
Sold, yeah.
So I know that both you and Dolly believe very strongly in children's literacy and what goes on with children.
Yeah.
How did you meet and when did you decide to collaborate together?
I had this rough idea. Well, one, I thought we might do a kid's book together. And then I had a rough idea for an adult book. And I just called up and I said, do you want to get together? And she said, all right, if you want to come down here. So I went to Vanderbilt, so I know Nashville anyway. And so I went down and we spent a couple hours together. And it was like let's do a book. I mean, we hit it off perfectly. We're both sort of, not too full of ourselves, tend to deflect with humor. She said, Jim, I've written thousands of country songs. I could write one standing on my head. Want to see? But she's like that. She's very quick, very smart. And we just kind of said, let's do it. And we made the deal in her office. No lawyers, no agents, no nothing. Just the two of us. And that was it. Then the agents and lawyers said, what?
You did that on your own.
That was it. That was our deal. And to this day, that's what it's been. And we really have a lot of fun. She, for the first birthday we were together, she called up and she sang happy birthday to me over the phone. And I wanted to say, Dolly, if I hang up, can you call again? Because I want to get it on voicemail. But I didn't have the guts to do that, so I didn't do it. This year, she sent me a poem, and it's called New Old Friends. And she knew it was good because she framed it. And New Old Friends, and in the poem she says that she had written a song earlier in her career in which she said there was no such thing as New Old Friends. But she said since we've been together about a year and a half, she's realized that I am a new old friend, even though we've only been together for a year and a half. And then she said, I always love you, Dolly. And, so we're close. It's really nice. I'm looking forward to the movie where we'll spend more time together. She'll ignore me then, because she'll just be a movie star. I'll just be a fan watching.
It's a walk-on part, something,
Yeah, I want to be the hunk in the movie. And she said, that's not happening. She said, the old guy? I said, maybe that one. Probably not, but maybe. Initially, she said, we can sing together. And then she heard my voice. She said, well, we really can't sing together.
Right. We can sing together, but we'll dub you out.
People think of her as so nice. She's nasty. I'm kidding. No, she is tough, though.
We do another book together?
I don't know. We'll see. I wasn't planning to do another one with President Clinton, and then, I don't know, Chelsea begged. No. I don't know. We've become, here's an interesting thing about people and the way they view the world and whatever. We're so, narrow now. It's just crazy. It's just terrible. Whatever you think of whatever, anybody, the Clintons, me, here's a telling thing about the Clintons. The first time Sue and I went out to dinner with them, about 4 hours almost, in this little restaurant. And half a dozen times during the meal, they were holding hands under the table. And people don't think of them that way. And I have different stories about different presidents, whatever, and you go really?
Right.
You're going to have one about Trump, which I won't get into.
But it's all interesting because you see people differently. You get to see them without
human beings, as opposed to caricatures.
So who was more fun to collaborate, Dolly?
They're both. Dolly's more fun, but I enjoyed both of them. They're and Hillary. Hillary, I really like a lot. And there's another one. The only thing, the first time we were with her, and every time I go and I blame her, whoever she put around her, the so-called marketing people, forget about it. You didn't do your job, because they needed to capture the person I've seen at dinner. She's warm, she's funny, she's down to earth, she's self-effacing, she's a delight. And they didn't get that. They didn't get that. And that's what they needed to get, because people need to feel a certain something. And instead, and if they feel phoniness, which come out of nervousness a lot of times, I don't want to vote, I'm not comfortable. But if you saw her, you'd go, oh yeah, no, she's great. And she is, she's great. She's very smart, but she's all those other things. And anyway, for what it's worth. I'm not Democrat, Republican, sort of independent, When I was out with Clinton, I got a kick, because I grew up in New York, so the Yankees, Roger Maris and Mantle and all that stuff. And then we moved to Massachusetts, and it was just Stremski and Lomborg. So I root for both the Red Sox and the Yankees. And people go, you can't do that. I go, well, I do, I'm sorry.
There are a couple of games a year. That's just not going to work. That's just not going to work. So, okay, but collaborating. But then, of course, Dolly doesn't play golf. And you can play golf with President Clinton, correct? Dolly doesn't play golf?
Yeah, kind of. He's yes, we could. Yeah, we do sometimes. No, Sue's my wife. She's my golf partner. except she hits it farther than I do, which is really irritating. But, it's okay, I love her.
Recent news stories have covered that many students, especially those that are economically challenged, are not reading on grade level, close to grade level, and the post-pandemic numbers for even middle-class kids are not great. What do you think we need to do to enact change here? I mean, what needs to happen?
Well, for starters, the presidential debates, do you ever hear anybody talking about education? How stupid is that? And I got into this with the kids and their parents and whatever. Little kids, you've got to give them things to read that they go, I loved it, let me read something else. I'm sorry, that's the deal. If your job is to get them reading, that's the job. The job is not to teach them Shakespeare initially. It's not to scare them off. It's just where they go like, I have an imprint for kids, and our mission is a very simple one, but I think it's smart. When a kid finishes a Jimmy book, that's the name of the kid will say, please give me another book, as opposed to what millions of kids say, I've never read a book I liked. There's plenty of books out there they'll like. There are plenty of stories, but you got to give them stories. And it's not like Choo Choo Train went up to no, they don't want that. Choo Choo, they do when they're like 2 years old.
Right.
But they want stories, and they don't, and we just need to do that. And at a certain point, when they have the tools, then you can start pushing them. Then you can start, like if they taught movies in schools, which wouldn't be the worst idea in the world, you could learn about structure and character, whatever. But if they started out with Ingmar Bergman movies, we would say, oh, I don't like movies.
Yeah.
And that's what we do. We started out with Ingmar Bergman stuff, and they go, oh, I don't like books. Don't do that. That's self-defeating. And it's particularly important for kids who are going to struggle early on, and kids who don't have advantages. You gotta ease into. You gotta help them. You gotta love them. You gotta hug them. You gotta encourage them, and you gotta give them stuff that they're gonna say, I liked that. That was terrific. That was fun.
And also this, when they say they don't like it, what don't you like so I can find you something else? What did you not enjoy?
If it's a good story, most of the people will like it.
Most likely.
Yeah. I mean, you get some of these movies, you go, oh, and then you go, oh, everybody likes it, even though they thought they wouldn't, but it's just a good story. I think.
My younger son's first book report.
My mother was a teacher, so.
My son's first book report was on Scooby-Doo, the novelization, and he asked me who the author was, and I was dying. We had a site called Kids Reads at the time, and I'm like, great, he's going to go, and his brother turned to me, he goes, Mom, he read a book. And it was interesting because middle grade, he read a book every day, and then he went to high school, and it was required reading. And as soon as he got required reading, I wasn't That's a good one, that's very good, I like that. But he said, as soon as he got the list of what he was supposed to do, it was a turnoff. And he doesn't read now. And this is every day, can you get me this book? Can you get me that book? Can we go to the library? And that's what's
and the thing of it is they could fill the list with books that, for the most part, would turn kids on. There's plenty of books that are out there that are extremely readable. You'll learn something about the world. And I don't know, whatever. Yeah, enough about that.
But besides writing...
We didn't come here to church to get preached to.
Besides writing, you're also a voracious reader. So was okay.
It's over. I've finally overwhelmed myself. There's so many books that I'm doing, but I still do read. Don't ask me what I'm reading right now.
Is reading like a day thing, a night thing, morning thing, or is it really like?
I'll always have 2 or 3 books that during the day. I'll just I need a half an hour. Boom, I'll go read for half an hour. On the plane, I have when I have an old Robert Gray novel and whatever.
Got it. So do you do your own research?
Do I do my own reading? Sure, yeah.
No, your own research.
The research, do I do my own? If it's a scene in Hawaii, I will do it. If it's a crack house in the Bronx, I might get something else. Different strokes.
So the typical day is you oversee what's happening with everything, and then you write, and then you check in with people, and you pick covers, and what happens?
I know, I'm not like the hall monitor. No, they send me pages, and I get back to them usually that day or the next day.
Okay.
I'll read them, boom, boom, boom. Oh, you're the best, you're sweet, but no, it will be things like we're marching in place. You read certain books, you start reading and it says, "Oh, this is really interesting," and then you just feel like it's marching in place. And for my kind of book, that's not a good thing. Or the tone, it's lost its voice. or whatever. Voices, I talked to the kids about that. I don't know if they understood it, but that whole thing about voice, my voice is very colloquial. If everybody wrote that way, it'd be a disaster. But that's what I do, and voice is really important.
So you've got a very special co-writer for a book coming up with your wife, Sue. It's Things I Wish I Told My Mother.
I'm not the co-writer. No, my job for that book was to go get coffee and sandwiches.
Oh, okay. All the heavy lifting was done by Sue. So that's coming out on April 17th. And is it the
Things
first
I Wish I Told My Mother. She really did a wonderful job. Her mother, and she wrote it with a friend of hers, Susan DeLallo, and both of their mothers died in the same year. Sue's mother was 98, and Susan DeLallo's mother was 94, and that's where the line came from, Things I Wish I Told My Mother. And the book is about a mother and daughter. The mother is a surgeon, she's very, and the daughter's more of an artist. And something happens to the mother early on, and they decide they're going to go to Europe to just try to become not mother-daughter, but like friends. And we know that won't work. So, because they're always going to be mother-daughter, but they do go to Europe together, and they're an odd couple, and it really turned out well. I'm very happy for her, and I think people will like the book.
So you work a lot, and you enjoy it, so you're not really working, because you do things that you enjoy all day long. Do you ever close your office at some point in the day and turn off your creative brain, or is that even possible? Are you just writing notes down?
I can turn it off in 2 seconds, but I can turn it on. I was saying, I could write a book about this gathering. There's a little graveyard out there. Right. No problem. I can do that one. That would be easy. This one's a little more challenging, but the graveyard. I have this in both offices. We are in Briarcliff Manor, and then we're in Florida, and it's about this stick with ideas. It has a clever title, Ideas, on the cover. It's just a lot of ideas. Sometimes it's just a line. Sometimes it's a title. Suzanne's Diary for Nicholas. What happened with that was Sue, our son, she's literally taken 1 million photographs of Jack. And on the table in our living room, there are a couple of these books of photographs, and I was just leafing through one at one point. And then I was thinking that at some point, because we're older, and Jack would be looking through this and we wouldn't be around. And then I had this horrifying idea of looking through your child's photographs and the child not being around. And that stimulated me to this book, Suzanne's Diary for Nicholas. So, they come from, anything. All of a sudden you're often, the one that I think everybody got, Blowback, the idea of the person in the White House being insane, I went like, I said, hey, it could happen. and then you look around the world. I don't want to get political on it, but we got Chinese, we got Venezuela, we got North Korea. There's a lot of strange boys out there. Russia. I don't want to say that because I'm afraid of getting poisoned, but I might not make so that it just kind of gets you into it, and it's like, okay, I'd like to write that. It's like the old back in the '60s when we were all afraid they were going to drop bombs on us, and everybody was paranoid. Isn't correct because they were thinking about dropping bombs on us, and there were Fail Safe and 7 Days in May and all those wonderful paranoid thrillers. And I said, I want to kind of try to do one like that. Yeah.
Well, they were telling us to go under the desk, and that was what was going to save us. Okay, just remember that.
Well, in thinking back, I go, well, if the roof came in, it might help.
That might help.
Or some things off the roof. I don't know.
And they had us practice that. That was what was really crazy.
At least once a week. I remember. It was ridiculous. And in Catholic school, you had to pray, too.
Yes.
You had to pray out loud.
Yes, while you were down there, and then genuflected the nun when you got back up, right?
Yeah, and they get cracked. It's corporal punishment. That was the thing I remember best about Catholic school. The brothers would literally... this is in the autobiography. We had this brother, Catholic, up in Newburgh, New York. And we had them for 2 years for science and math. One was in the morning, one was in the afternoon. And literally every class he would come in and he would say, "Gentlemen, anyone without their homework, please stand." And he'd walk up. And most days, I wasn't a masochist, so most days I had my homework. But anyway, but if he came up to me and he'd come up and go, "Mr. Patterson, yes, brother, you know what's going to happen now? Yes, brother, do you know why?" From the floor, boom, across the face. And my joke was, and this is true, the kid next to me, my friend Bobby Hatfield, he goes, "Brother, you can skip the preliminaries, just hit me." But yeah, like that. And the nuns wouldn't do that. They were more into the more subtle, like noogies, where they'd scratch your knuckles on your head. That really hurts. Or wrap you with a thing or a ruler. Right. This lady never smiles at this stuff. Where is it? How about you?
Well, it was really funny. We had this one night.
When you're in a comedy club and it's like nobody, nothing, and it's just like, okay, thank you so much. You've been a great crowd, and we're out of here.
We had one nun that we kept telling her parents were crazy. Like she threw the doorstop at a kid and it missed the kid, but it hit like a blood wall to her. And that's so she was committed. And after something happened, and we said, "We told you all year. Did you not listen because we were just kids?" So just like so, don't know.
Oh, the poor Catholics.
You know what? I'm going to give a huge endorsement. Everybody got a copy of the book today, but I'm going to recommend you read this as well. And I'm going to recommend it because I understood who James Patterson is after reading this. And there's so much.
You're recommending it still. That's so amazing.
Really recommending it.
I don't get it. Oh, that's right. I paid her backstage.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, I read the money. But, there are a lot of times where you want to know more about an author. And you can go to an interview, you can go with everything. But what's in here is really these vignettes, I'll call them, not just chapters, vignettes of things that happen in the author's life. And I highly recommend being able to get inside the author's head that way. And I thought it was a terrific book. I read it over the last week and I really enjoyed it.
I will say, if you like books or you're interested in writing, it definitely, you're there. And it's not the usual boring kind of autobiography where I'm going to talk about my hometown for 40 pages. There's none of that stuff.
No.
All stories like the brother who would sit there and get up and slap you and whatever. It's all stuff like that. A lot of violence. It was funny. I said it's like a mystery, and then I said, come to think of it, quite a few people died. My parents, whatever. Yeah.
But it's interesting also because publishing has changed for what you've been doing as well.
Yeah.
You're having a book out once a month, sometimes more than once a month, and to see what has happened as a result of that. And I find it interesting. We've been in, we started Book Reporter 26 years ago. So we've sort of paralleled a lot of times in 1999 when you went to 3 books a year. When you started paving the way for doing things differently.
So you went to 2 issues a week?
Yeah, at the beginning. We just did more in each issue. But what's interesting is to see how publishing has changed. For your showing, we can do this. We can do this again.
One of the unfortunate things is, less bookstores, and Borders going out of business was not a good thing.
Yeah, it was really bad.
And especially with children's books, they don't stock children's books. They don't stock them. They're not in Walmart. They're not. They're a little bit, but they're really not. Or in Costco and obviously the indies don't have enough room because one of the problems is, especially if you have a series, if kids they want the whole series, and nobody has those other than Amazon. So it's difficult, and there's nowhere to get reviews. There's the Times Book Review. There's very few places for reviews, whatever, which people don't know how to find that. But just your average people, people who aren't in the business. And that's one of the hardest things now is getting the word out that the book is there, and why might I read it?
Yeah.
And that's the biggest problem.
We started doing a preview event during the pandemic because we realized no one was going to a store and they didn't know what was coming out next 4 weeks. Look, you're basically thinking about dinner on Saturday. You actually think about dinner tonight at the beginning of the pandemic. You didn't have time. So we did an edited version of here's what's coming out the next 4 weeks, and here we're going to tease about 2 months out. We had 250 people to show up on a Wednesday afternoon to hear us do this. And they're still showing up the second Wednesday of the month because people are craving that kind of information.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the little kids, you go and you could get the first 3 of the series in the store and the newest one, and that was it.
Or worse, there's 1 and 6.
Yes.
While you were away.
Morristown.